Happy Thanksgiving and happy Rivalry week, everyone. Welcome to Dynasty Dumbies, your home for the latest and greatest in college football news and action. We're your hosts, Hunter and Tony, and we're going to jump right into this week's top news stories, starting with the college football playoff and ESPN have agreed to extend the deadline for any future format changes from December 1st to January 23rd, 2026. This is a big topic of debate of if they want to stick with the current 12-team format or what a new one might look like.
It's pretty massive, honestly, and it's also kind of weird that we have to openly say that we're going to extend a deadline for possibly changing anything in the postseason, because we're already seeing how, it going from 4 to 12, the controversies that's come with it, and the added controversies on top of the old ones, and then now with how things are going, there's the potential of them trying to make it even worse, pretty much, with how many different things there are going to be. So it just seems like they're worried about the wrong things right now when there's current stuff that they could, fix or improve on before even considering trying to possibly expand it.
This is only the second year of the 12-team playoff. We haven't even finished the second year. And in between the first and second, we already had a change with how conference champions are ranked within the playoff. So I don't understand why they're looking at the 12-team playoff. Let's see how it goes for a few years. Do I think it's perfect? No, but let's ride it out for a little bit, not just start mixing it up immediately because they feel like it will better fit the narratives and programs that they want to push. There's bigger issues that they should be worrying about timeline-wise, in my opinion. Stuff like the transfer portal, how these coaches are getting hired during the season, which we're going to touch on here in just a couple minutes. Those, to me, are bigger concerns, but they're worried about the 12-team playoff and the format. Ultimately, as we all know, it comes down to the money of the deals, and that's what they're worried about. I just don't understand why that's their priority outside of the money.
I think there's nothing but the money at that point. Especially the fact that it's, with ESPN, where, it's their, the playoff is theirs, basically. They have all the rights to it. So it's pretty big that, it's through one network and they basically get to say and do what they want with it and, how things go. So it's a little weird. I'm with you in the sense of, there's a lot of other things that need to be fixed before we even try to, adjust it yet again. Heavy on the whole tampering with the coaches and whatnot in the portal. And, I think if we can get that fixed first, then, could be open to a playoff push for different stuff. But who knows?
It's definitely going to be something that continues to change, which other things are changing as well across college football with a lot of coaching news this week. Starting us off with Cal firing head coach Justin Wilcox. He was 48-55 over his 9 seasons, 4 bowl appearances, and just 1 win. They are moving on in this new era of college football from Wilcox, who has been there for 9 years, been an average team at best during his time there. So I understand this move from Cal's perspective, and we'll see if they can retool to compete in this ACC conference that's now across all coasts.
Yep, it's one of those things that you kind of saw coming, pretty much. Like you said, Cal's been very average, and losing to their rival in Stanford, the Smarty Bowl. So that was, I guess, the final nail in the coffin. So it was bound to happen at some point. But another part of another coaching news here is that Mike Norvell of FSU will be returning in 2026. His name has been one of those that is very much on the hot seat, basically, after a great start this season and then just absolutely shitting the bed, where we thought that FSU was possibly, a team to reckon with, and then they just blow up. Yeah, possibly back, who knows? But they just collapsed per usual. But it is confirmed, I assume, that he will return for 2026, but it does not mean he will stay the entirety of 2026.
This is a move that it's felt like FSU was moving towards for a little while. I think if they were going to fire Norvell, they would have done it sooner. I think maybe it's something to do with getting boosters money in play to pay a buyout, whatever it might be. I think they're going to ride with him one more season, and if he doesn't perform in 2026, I do think it will be his time in Florida State.
Absolutely, and with how the ACC is run now, with the money of things, and Florida State making their way back into that conversation of TV ratings with the money. So the money's there with them and with how they were playing. So this is definitely do or die for Mike Norvell and and FSU as a whole. But with how the coaching cycle is going this year, it's kind of hard to imagine what could possibly come up next year as well.
This coaching cycle has been such an interesting one, so it's a brain twister to think about next year's already, quite frankly. So I don't blame FSU for keeping him. It will be interesting to see how it plays out, though. In other news, Jim Mora is leaving UConn after a 9-3 season for Colorado State, who's going to be joining the Pac-12, the new look Pac-12 here soon. Kind of a surprising move for me. I'm not surprised that Jim Mora left UConn. I'm surprised with the choice in Colorado State.
It's one of those ones that, is it more like a lateral movement at that rate? I mean, UConn's done fantastic this year in their own rights. I mean, obviously being independent, they don't have a conference to play for. But, they've played some pretty good football this year, and it feels weird going from a team like a UConn to a team like a Colorado State, where they're kind of on that same sort of level right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe going over to that new look Pac-12 was what was enticing, and just like was maybe that final thing to be like, okay, yeah, we're in a conference where we have something to play for, and the possibility of other stuff. And who knows? But it's definitely a weird one in my eyes.
I think it ultimately comes down to, yes, they had a good season as an independent, but UConn needs to join a conference to be able to compete for a national title if that's his goal. I think it will be incredibly hard for UConn to make it as an independent, unlike Notre Dame, just because they're not a brand. And the move for UConn is so much bigger than just football. You got to think about basketball. Their basketball team doesn't want to leave the Big East and their historic rivalries there. But a conference like UConn, a team like UConn and a conference like the ACC wants its basketball team too. I'm just surprised that Colorado State was the move ultimately, I guess. I thought that, Cal just opened up. That would have been a bigger one. Samford, something like that. I guess I'm surprised with the move to Colorado State over maybe one of these bigger programs.
Maybe it's just at the end of the day that that money was just different over there. I don't know. Colorado State could have got a little injection of money there. So who knows? We'll have to see. But another team here that is losing their head coach before the season is over is North Texas. Their coach, Eric Morris, has decided to take the job at Oklahoma State after a pretty successful year this year.
He gets their first 10-win season since, I believe it's 1947. They're 10-1. He's been 21-15 over his 3 years, and it's his first winning season. We really turned this North Texas program around. They haven't had a lot of success over their history, and to get a 10-win season here, they're right in. They control their own destiny for the playoffs. They win out, they make the playoffs. That's what the committee has told us with the American Conference champion. So I think it's a great hire for Oklahoma State in the sense that this guy has proven to turn a school like North Texas around. Oklahoma State's going to have a lot more resources. I like the stab at a younger guy at a smaller school, letting them connect with the portal. I think it's a good fit for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and just to mention with Eric Morris, a tweet I had seen earlier is just a list of things he has done in his time, and what some small ones here, not really that small, is he helped recruit and develop Patrick Mahomes to Texas Tech. He developed Cam Ward from a 0-star recruit to the number 1 pick in the draft, and has now turned Drew Mestemaker into the FBS's leading passer after he never started a varsity game in his entire career. So, and like you had said earlier, leading them to 10 wins for the first time since 1947. And in his 13 years as a head coach or offensive coordinator, his offenses have ranked top 10 nationally, FBS or FCS, in yards 10 different times. So to say that he is a good hire, I think, is almost like a little understatement, because that dude can show, he can get them going and get things moving in Oklahoma State. So they could potentially be a fun team to watch. Be on the lookout if Drew Mestemaker follows him there.
There's a good chance that happens. Unfortunately for Texas Tech, next year will be a big change. As a JMU fan, I know what it was like just a couple of years with Cignetti. It's going to happen to us again this year, more than likely with Bob Chesney. So, as much as there's been beef between North Texas and the American and JMU, sucks to see that for another Group of 6 conference.
It's bound to happen. I'm with you there. It's more than likely to happen with John Summerall and Tulane as well. So it's going to be one of those things that the G6 as a whole has to deal with. It's just bound to happen. But, we've seen teams like JMU, losing Cignetti and then finding another coach and still being successful. So there's plenty of chances out there for the G6s.
Exactly. JMU is more than likely going to have their 5th head coach in the last 10 years and have had success in all 10 years. So it is definitely doable at any level. Now, jumping into the rankings for this week. Taking a look first, of course, at the Dummies rankings. As always, our criteria, we really want to emphasize the head-to-head when it matters and when we are able. That is definitely a hard one as we get towards the end of the season, but it's one that we really want to stand by. Weekly results matter no matter when they take place during the season. We are not considering any sort of hypotheticals no matter what. It's whatever's happened on the field and not, I think they would beat this team or that team. And ultimately, just the vibes, how the team's playing, you could consider it a little bit of an eye test as well. And as we get towards the end of the season, it's important to note we're not going to punish conference championship game participants, winners or losers, mainly the losers. They should be rewarded for making it that far and not be punished and dropped out of the playoff for losing.
Absolutely. And that's something we're going to hark on these next couple weeks with the conference championship games coming up and with teams earning their spots this upcoming weekend. So that's definitely something to keep an eye out between us and possibly the committee with some of the things that they have said about it. So, but just to go into the Dummies rankings, of course, first, because ours are the best. 0 movement in the top 6, purely because there's no need for it. They've all played, they've all won. Not a lot of, reason to move any of them. You could argue some could be changed interchangeably, but there's no glaring difference. Also, a quick note that we did have all 5 ballots this week, so this is a more accurate reflection of the dummy rankings. That being said, with Ole Miss moving up 1, BYU moving down 1, and Utah as well, I think that is more to do with us having all 5 ballots. I don't think it's as much to do with the play and stuff like that. I think it's just the overall collective. Oklahoma moving up to 10, I think that has to do with them, actually with their play. Getting another pretty good win against Mizzou, even though, they should never have been ranked in the first place by the committee. And then, of course, JMU moving up a spot to 11, and Miami rounding it out at 12. And a quick note of us having Miami as the ACC champ, even though it is not super likely that they make it, but just because they are the highest ranked, that's how we have it ranked right now, or have them in there as that 5th champ, so that it's just how it fell. Obviously, that could very much change with this upcoming weekend. They could make it in as the conference champ. They could possibly make it in as an at-large. Who knows? So it's all, all to play for them, especially in our eyes, and, of course, the committees. first two out being Notre Dame, moving up 2 slots after a pretty impressive win against Syracuse, and then Alabama dropping 1 spot because we don't reward people for playing terrible teams. They don't get it. We don't care about their November buys. It's ridiculous at this point. I love what Dan Lanning said about it. Go look it up if you haven't seen it, but it's great. And then everyone else to round out the top 25, a lot of the same teams, all just kind of moving spots there. The only new team we have is Pitt jumping in at 21 after their very impressive win against Georgia Tech at Georgia Tech, which means Georgia Tech is our biggest drop this week, going all the way down 14 slots to 23. And then, of course, USC after their beat down, I guess, in Oregon, excuse me. They dropped to 25. Didn't drop out, but they dropped to 25.
I think Georgia Tech dropping the most in our poll is the biggest news. Really just knocks them out of playoff contention. They need help to make the ACC title game, and even with a win this week against Georgia, it's not going to be enough to jump them up more than likely. You never know, though. It could be enough, but it's an interesting game. I think the reason I find it so interesting is that with Georgia Tech dropping this far, we had the big topic of Pitt jumping into the rankings. Just a couple weeks ago, they were 25th in the country. They lost one, come back and win another. Now they jump back into the rankings at an even higher slot, even though they got beat down pretty good by Notre Dame. But they pulled off a really impressive win against Georgia Tech, replacing Houston, who fell out of the rankings this week after their loss. Should Georgia Tech fallen all the way down to 23 below Pitt, the consensus around it was that this head-to-head really did matter, and that these teams, Georgia Tech, even though they had 2 losses compared to Pitt's 3, that head-to-head really mattered with the way Georgia Tech had been playing.
Yeah, it's very, I don't want to say cut and dry at this rate because it's not even close. But with the way that it went down and the way things were going and them having that, very tight resume with each other, it was hard not to put them in that position. I mean, all of us had Georgia Tech,
fairly high.
Pretty high, so all of us except for Cody had them inside the top 10. And then, when Sand Blitz had his rankings in, they were just outside the top 10, but they probably would have been in the top 10 the prior week, but hypothetical, don't consider it. But they, it's in our eyes, it's technically an impressive win, especially on the road against a very high-ranked Georgia Tech team in our eyes. So to have them drop that far almost makes sense, but at the same time doesn't make sense because, again, it's extremely close. And how you said how Pitt was in, then out, now they're back in, and it's just that time of the year where it's just going to go up and down, back and forth, left and right, every direction possible with how some of these rankings are going to fall.
I think it's important to look at some of the other instances of it on our poll. Miami is sitting above Notre Dame. That head-to-head really a big differentiator between those two teams. Then Vandy is over Texas by large margin despite the head-to-head just a few weeks ago with Texas winning. And same with Michigan and USC, with Michigan losing to USC earlier in the year. These teams have head-to-head wins, but based off their recent play and how we as a group had them ranked before, where these teams were pretty similarly ranked before the USC or Georgia Tech loss or Texas loss. It's the head-to-head was not enough to propel it forward. If these teams had the same record, the head-to-head is always going to matter. But it's a case-by-case thing where if Miami goes and loses to Pitt this week, just because they have the head-to-head over Notre Dame doesn't mean they'll stay above Notre Dame. And that's the example of how it goes. But in some situations when a team falls, they might stay ahead of their counterpart of a team they already beat. Like we saw earlier in the season where we had Louisville, or me personally had Louisville ahead of Miami despite a Louisville loss.
Yeah, it's very it's very nitpicky now at this point with some of these losses and how the definition of the head-to-head is still at its core the same, but with how things around it work are changing almost every single week. Where, I said at one point that I thought that if they were ranked, the head-to-head would come into play. Now it's almost impossible to keep up with that because then certain teams would be all over the place when deservedly so. They shouldn't be there. Like I'm not going to drop a Georgia, just because Alabama lost. Like it's about what they deserve, and if they get into that closer knit, then yeah, I could switch things around, and if they're one or two slots apart, I'll probably switch it around. And I know Mr. Sand Blitz or Sergeant Blitz, he did that. He did realize, he had Miami and Notre Dame. I think they were two spots apart, and then he ended up switching them because he realized that, the head-to-head, like he took it into an account and he switched them. So before he switched them, they were actually tied yet again in our with our numbers. But with the switch, it propelled Miami up because they moved up 2 slots and Notre Dame moved down 2 slots. So it just goes to show that a lot of stuff, everything matters with us, especially only being 5 people. Every slot matters and where you're going to fall. And I think with the way things have fell for our poll specifically, it's a lot more reflective of what the group thinks, especially now where we're still that nitty-gritty time where a lot of tight things, a few differing opinions like always. It's going to happen with 5 people, but it's definitely more reflective of what we think it should be.
I agree, and speaking of just 5 votes mattering, it really matters too with those receiving votes. Really shows that there is a diversity in who's getting voted for. So teams that are sitting on the outside, 1 vote could really swing the poll. And we had San Diego State, UNLV, Wake Forest, Arizona, and UConn all receiving votes this week from us. So really it is tight there down at the bottom. A lot of teams jostling for position.
It's going to be like that until the end of the season when conference championship games are over and we get that, final lock in place of our bracket and the committees. But it's going to change every week until then. But another, speaking of possibly changing every week, we're going to jump into the playoff committee's poll here, their newest and I don't want to say greatest because it's not poll. Definitely the newest poll, the most recent one. That's what we'll go with. And what they decided to do, again, creating probably more confusion. So with them, top 5 remains the same. No changes there. They had Oregon and Ole Miss switch. Oregon up to 6, Ole Miss up to 7. I think that I want to say it's because of Oregon's good win, but it's also possibly looming of the Lane Kiffin situation that we still don't know much about. And the committee has said that while it will be taken into account if they don't have their head coach, they don't have that, quote, data point to use to say, like, oh, this is what Ole Miss is like without their coach compared to what they are with their coach. So I don't think it'll affect them too much, but I still think it could possibly have that, where they could end up not hosting a game pretty much.
That definitely could be something that happens. Well, it'll be interesting to see after the Egg Bowl when Lane Kiffin's news is supposedly going to be announced. So that is definitely a big talking point that we'll continue to watch for. And looking down through the rest of the top 12 here, you got Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Bama, Miami, and Tulane. Miami and Tulane are the last 2 out, last 2 in. Miami is here, though, as more of a placeholder like in our poll. It's very unlikely they'll go to the ACC championship game, so they have to get in at an at-large. So a more accurate reflection here would be UVA or SMU, who just have to win and they're in the ACC title game. Miami needs some help to get in for sure. I think it's going to be a interesting comparison, and the biggest talking point this week is Notre Dame and Miami. Some people are saying it's justified based off of every other metric besides head-to-head, where others are saying what happens on the field should matter most. We shouldn't be... Football is played on grass, not paper. The game was already played. Miami won that. But it's really interesting. Last week, the committee said that they wouldn't compare Notre Dame and Miami because Notre Dame was in that 9-12 range, while Miami is 13-16. But now Miami is at 12, so why aren't they getting compared now?
It's very weird, but in the call afterwards where they were talking to the chair, they did say that now they're in that same competitive pool that they were missing last week for that head-to-head to really come into play. But now that they're in that pool, they move the goalpost. And it really seems like that they're saying, from what all the stuff that I gathered from this is that they're saying that head-to-head does not hold enough weight as other metrics like the offensive efficiency, the strength of record, the defensive efficiency, and all this other stuff where it's just numbers, blah, 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 when we've seen what they do on the field. And the fact that it doesn't hold enough weight to where they're saying it's enough to give them that slight edge kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, especially in the way that they do their rankings, where they do them basically like four teams at a time. So they'll do like that 9-12 range, and they put Notre Dame at 9 and then put Miami at 12, and they're just like, oh, I don't think there's enough there to justify it. And it doesn't make any sense, especially they're starting to compare common opponents, and people love to bring up
played each other. They should be comparing that.
Exactly. They people love to bring up the Syracuse game, for example. Notre Dame handled them completely, not even close, whatever. Failed to bring up that Syracuse was starting a true freshman walk-on at quarterback. But then they also fail to mention that Notre Dame only was up 10-7 at halftime against NC State, and Miami was up 24-0 at halftime at NC State, and Miami beat them by more. So like, it's just a common contradicting itself with how they want to talk about these two when the deficiencies are there on both sides, but they fail to realize that the game has happened already. And it shouldn't be that difficult. And, if it, when you're talking about if they were to play again, sure, you can bring up some other stuff, how each team's playing and whatnot. But when you're talking about the whole resume as a whole and you see that these two teams have played each other, it should come into play. Can they prove, can that decision end up proving you wrong? Sure. Can it prove you right? Absolutely. But, it shouldn't matter at that point to make the decision.
It's so frustrating. I think head-to-head should be the greatest factor, and this is a scenario where I think that head-to-head does matter. And I have to give a shout-out to Booger McFarland because he is the only guy on the college football playoff show that stood up for games mattering and was not a company man for ESPN. He said that we can talk about all the metrics that the claim that Notre Dame was better, but I don't need that. I'll just turn on the tape from when these two teams played. That's the metric I need, and that's exactly how I think both of us feel about head-to-head. That's all the metrics I need. You can put all that stuff on paper, but ultimately, football is played on grass, not paper.
When Booger said that, I almost stood up and clapped. I mean, I never thought that I would see somebody on ESPN stand up for Miami like that, where it's like we've seen almost everything play against Miami with how everyone talks, because you have someone that was on the opposite side of the table of him in Joey Galloway, who was the exact opposite as Booger, where he said Miami played Virginia Tech, now they won the game, they added a touchdown at the end, it was meaningless. Why was it meaningless? It's a touchdown. So let's call it a 10-point win. Wasn't a 10-point win. To see them move up, this is setting up the conversation everybody's been wanting to have. Can they get close enough to Notre Dame to get them in the same grouping when we're comparing these teams? Very interesting move to see them move. Very interesting move to see them move up one. Why is the Virginia Tech game being brought up? Who cares if they added on a score at the end? That's the point. I mean, they know that those things are getting taken into account because when they're bringing up these other metrics like the offensive efficiency, scoring touchdowns helps your offensive efficiency. So it shouldn't matter if it was in the first minute of the game or the last second of the game. It makes zero sense. And then for him to go on after that and say that in week one, Miami was a better team, and that's the only time. What do you mean that's the only time? Notre Dame was 0-2. They started the season 0-2 and were still ranked, and you're saying that's week 1 was the only time that Miami was better than Notre Dame? I call bullshit.
I 100% agree. Why would Miami even play this game if it's not going to be considered when these teams should be compared to each other? Why do you even play that game? It makes no sense. College football is the only sport that is moving in a trend where people want to say that games matter less and less. And it is so frustrating to see the conversation unfold. It's just complete idiocracy.
They have put the precedent forth that it matters when you lose or win now. It doesn't matter if you win or lose, but when. And that is just a terrible metric to go by where, I understand that things change over the week. Players get hurt, players get better, and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you still played the same amount of time in one game that you would any other game. So all that's telling me is that you're just not prepared week 1. So it just makes no sense in this, especially in this just aspect as a whole, where this isn't the last time we'll see something like this. I guarantee it. But for it to be 2 teams like this, it just blows my mind.
And honestly, this isn't the only instance where we're seeing teams like Miami, like where you mentioned how Joey Galloway highlighted they're moving up. They're in an attack position. It's not the only team that the committee moved up in that sense. Michigan jumped up to number 15, Texas up to 16. Both of these teams get a shot at a top 4 team this coming week with Michigan and Ohio State and Texas and A&M. A win here could propel one of these teams into the playoff and make things all the more interesting as well. And it's frustrating to see how the rankings are being used.
They're almost moving them up and propelling to give almost a better setup for if they were to lose, and then if they were to win, it's just like, oh, look, like, Ohio State, for example, if they lose to Michigan, they lost to a number 15 Michigan. Mm-hmm. And if Michigan were to lose, they're losing to the best team in the country. And Texas A&M beating Texas is like, oh, they're a top 20 team, top 15, 16 team. And then if they lose, it's like, oh, they lost to a top team. It's like, it feels weird where they're trying to set up stuff more than they are ranking teams for what they've done, where it seems like they're trying to just set these things up to either prove their point or possibly create something that helps them in another way in the week. Because like we've seen them every week where they're just over here one day and then the next week they're over here saying something else. So it's just weird how they're kind of setting these things up.
And I think it really comes down to the committee's transparency in all of this. This is a closed-door meeting, but it should be available for everyone to watch to hold them accountable. The closed-door sessions make no sense when throughout history of college football, we've at least always had some form of transparency into the ranking system, and now it's decided by those like athletic directors and presidents who have skin in the game.
It's weird where, the closed doors thing, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. Because like you said, it creates that sense of, accountability and where we got eyes on us, where people are seeing us, people are seeing how we do things. And it would make them more consistent, because if people like us were to sit here and watch them every week and how they make their decisions, you could openly argue about things. They could give us more reasoning, instead of just giving us a piece of paper that has the top 25. I can see, why is this team 7? Why is this team 25? Like, it gives us that reasoning, because I feel like we don't get enough of that at this point, where you get a tiny 5-minute call on the show and then there's a media call afterwards that you have to go digging to find the answers for, unless you already find a reporter. So I feel like there's just not enough there for the general public to see on it's just reasoning on this and why things are being done, when it's really just it's insane at this point, like you said, where the sitting athletic directors and people who have stuff to do with this making decisions at the end of the day that could end up helping their team is absurd and unheard of.
Well, it feels like the College Football Playoff Committee is engineering outcomes instead of ranking the best teams. And I think that is so evident in how they've ranked the group of 6 and ACC teams here at the end. And this is obviously a really big topic for us, Tulane and JMU fans. With how the committee held Tulane at 24, despite the teams in front of them, Illinois, Mizzou, and Houston losing, Tulane stayed at 24, but then Arizona State at 25 jumped them, and SMU and Pitt, who weren't ranked, also jumped them. The committee sent a clear message that the ACC is not going to be hopped by 2 group of 6 teams for a playoff spot. By placing SMU, Pitt, and all the ACC contenders for the ACC title game ahead of Tulane, it ensures that their champ is going to be ranked high enough, unless if it's Duke. So please, God, Duke, be a miracle worker. It really sends home the point that why did Tulane only stay put when everyone else around them moved and they were already ranked? It just highlights that the committee is using the Group 5 as a placeholder where they feel obligated to have one team ranked, and they're not going to rank deserving teams like 10-1 North Texas and 10-1 JMU. It's completely ludicrous. I can't believe they're not going to continue to rank these other teams just to make it the narrative they want.
I feel like the committee almost forgot that they ranked Tulane last week, because since we've been getting the playoff rankings, every quote G6 and 5th champ we've had has lost. So, we had Memphis to start, and then they lost, and then USF in there, and then they lost, and then we get Tulane in there, and they were the first ones to win after being ranked by the playoff committee. And for them to do that and stay put is like, what? Especially when they get in at 24 and have Arizona State below them the week prior, and both teams win, but only Arizona moves up, or Arizona State moves up to 20. And it's like, what is the point? Like, why rank them at that rate? Like, if you're going to do that, you might as well just wait till after the conference championship games and then rank them at that point, just so that you can say they're ranked. And like, it's just weird that you would go through the lengths of ranking a team like a Tulane or, a North Texas or a JMU or whichever 5th champ it would be. Would the same thing happen there where, they won and they're just going to stay put because, like, oh, we don't know what to do with them, so we're just going to keep them right where they were because they win, but it doesn't matter what they win. They're just going to stay there. It's like condescending at that point of, like, this is where you're going to stay. This is our dedicated spot for the 5th champion, more than likely G6, because, like, they act like they're going to, like a team like a Tulane is just going to somehow be a Boise State of last year and just skyrocket up. Like, no, the highest they probably would fall at the end of the rankings and everything might be 20 if they're lucky. Mm-hmm. And that is a huge stretch on depending on who would lose above them and stuff. So it's almost like they're scared because they don't want another instance of a Boise and, what wasn't too long ago, what was it, Liberty, where they get these chances and then they just falter at the end and it makes them look stupid. I feel like they're almost just scared to take any sort of chance with these sort of teams because they don't want to look like they were idiots.
It's just frustrating when the committee added strength of record as a new key factor for this year, but going back to the consistency or lack thereof consistency we've been talking about with them doesn't seem to really matter, because if it did, JMU and North Texas at 10-1 should be ranked. They're top 25 in strength of schedule. That's what you need from a team. At least that's what they claim to, and it's just not true for these two teams. It's so frustrating when they're saying that, and then they're also saying they're an eye test committee. If that were true, JMU and North Texas would be ranked as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the strength of records, it's JMU 21, Tulane 22, North Texas 23. I mean, for them to sit there and hark on, that strength of record and eye test and offensive, defensive efficiency and all these other stuff when you have these teams in the G5 or G6 and, other stuff like that where they're up there, but they just don't give them anything because they're like, well, the patch on your jersey doesn't look as cool. So it's just, you can tell that there's bias. There's always going to be bias, and it's going to take quite a bit for something to change.
If it will ever change, because we both know that money revolves or solves, creates, and destroys everything in college football. It's really frustrating to see, and it's the bias for these teams here is really frustrating, especially as a fan of them. Knock on wood, I hope JMU keeps winning, and we can have that conversation when we get there. So it's frustrating. That's all I really can say about it at this point.
At the end of the day, it's just frustrating for anyone who is on the outside looking in, and they're not being given a black and white reason. There's too much gray area. There's too much. Well, yeah, you guys are top 5 in this, but you're not top 5 in this, and sort of stuff. And like when the same could be said for other teams, but they're like, oh yeah, they're definitely in. So it's, again, just holding. It's that accountability. It's that consistency. When are we ever going to see that consistency? Probably never at this rate. And they just need to find a way to get a clean slate and start again with how some of this is done.
We'll see if the changes they are extending for January 23rd allow them to do any of that. If they do, I don't have faith they will be very good ones. But I think the two most interesting things about this are what we're most frustrated with the ACC championship race and the Group of 5 and American championship race scenarios. The ACC is just a shit show. There is so much that could go right and wrong for so many teams in this situation.
It's almost like close your eyes, stick your hand in a hat, and pull a name out. And that's who's getting in, because it could be UVA, SMU, Miami's still in the running, Duke is still in the running that we're both hoping and praying for. Like Georgia Tech's still in there. I mean, it is just absurd how crazy this is, where any one team, 2-team combo is in there. The tweets earlier that I had sent of someone had posted the almost like a flow chart of certain.
I couldn't even comprehend it all.
They were showing what games are possible for the SEC. The Big 10, Big 12. Then you get to the ACC, and you can barely read any of the text because it's all super small because of how much they have to fit on there. So it just goes to show, every single ACC game this week for these teams at the top is extremely important. You can't really pick out one over the other. I mean, obviously, I would probably say Miami Pitt, because you lose, either of those teams lose, they're done. But you can say that to any of the other teams as well. So there's no one that's more important than the other. But obviously, with a team like a Miami where they need that help, that help will not matter if you do not win.
That is 100% true. In Miami's case, they have to win. If they can beat Pitt, they do have a chance at large bids for the college football playoff. I think they do have the longest shot to the title game, though. UVA and SMU have the easiest path. They win and they're in. They play each other. Winner goes to the college football playoff. That's insane. Pitt needs to win and then needs UVA or SMU to lose. So they have a very potential road in as well. Georgia Tech needs Pitt to win and Virginia and SMU to lose. Their game doesn't matter because they're playing an SEC team. Duke needs to win and both Pitt and SMU lose. I believe I understand that one correctly. There are some other scenarios, but these are just the easiest path ones. Miami really doesn't have one, in my opinion. They need a lot more to fall for all these teams. They need UVA, Duke, and SMU to lose, and this is all they have to win. And then there's also scenarios where they need NC State to win. Duke Miami has the hardest road to this title game.
It's going to take a village and more for Miami to somehow sneak in there. But, if somehow the Miami football gods find a way to do it, then they find a way to do it, because that would be best case scenario for Miami and all but, give them that easiest path to the playoff. But because getting that at-large bid is going to be very difficult for them, being that 12 seed where you probably have to be 10 to get in at this rate at an at-large. So they're probably going to be pretty big Auburn fans as well this weekend. So they need quite a bit. But another playoff race that's pretty interesting is the G6, specifically for me, the American, where there's so many tiebreakers in place here. But it's as simple as Tulane and North Texas win. They are in. Tulane would host because more than likely they would be the highest ranked team in the playoff. So that would give them that tiebreaker over North Texas to host it rather than go on the road. But there's still a chance for Navy to sneak in there. There's still a chance for USF to sneak in there. There's a lot of different scenarios here, and it could come down to the many tiebreakers that exist in the American. But again, it's as simple as for Tulane and North Texas: win, you're in, you got a spot in the conference championship, and you live to see another day.
The ACC, it's crazy that it's as simple as Tulane and North Texas win and they're in at this point. That they've been really tight at the top the whole season. And Navy, I think, is the wild card where they need to win and then one of the two top teams to lose. And they are in. And you could look at Navy sneaking into the playoff too if they're a two-loss American champion, which does not bode well for JMU. JMU is definitely the team on the outside looking in. The committee has all but guaranteed that the conference champion from the American will be in the playoff, I feel. JMU needs a Tulane or North Texas loss this weekend. Navy ideally to lose to Memphis so that they're just taken out. And then they cannot have a two-loss Memphis or one-loss North Texas be the AAC champion. I think if Tulane gets a third loss and North Texas gets a second but somehow win the conference, JMU at one loss will be ahead of both of them. Navy at two losses and being a conference champion is a little bit of a worry for me as a JMU fan.
It almost seems like the writing's on the wall at this point, where the committee has basically said it's coming out of the American, that fifth champ spot. But, crazier things have happened. It is possible for it to implode, with how some of these things are going, with these teams supposed to have, maybe a gimme game and stuff like that with their lesser conference opponents that they're playing this week. So it's going to come down to, again, I'm not going to say anything until the clock hits zero. When the games are over, we will know by late Saturday or possibly early morning Sunday, depending on how games go, who is in, who is out. If these at-large teams, where they're going to be sitting at and whatnot, and how their paths to the playoff.
I do love how the 12-team playoff is making every game matter down the stretch. I think that's huge. I still think that it could be adjusted. I think more teams would be better. But let's stick with it for a little while now. I like that games are mattering more, and more variety of games do matter. You want to pay attention to more. Speaking of games that we're going to be paying attention to this weekend, of course, JMU and Tulane. Your Green Wave traveling to Charlotte in a classic American rivalry game.
We're actually hosting Charlotte.
Oh, apologies.
Yes, it is in Ullman. It is in New Orleans. #PackUllman. And it is, I can't sit here and say that it's a gimme game, but it should be a gimme game. I mean, Charlotte is not a good team this year. They have not been a good team in quite a while. But for Tulane, again, simple as win. You guarantee you're in the conference championship game, and you will more than likely be hosting, depending on the playoff ranking, but with the way things have been going, they will be hosting, which I think is huge. Tulane, I have seen from the moment I became a fan last year to now that they are a much better team at home. The away games, you never know, especially, weather permitting. Being a southern team in New Orleans, it usually doesn't get that cold, so you're probably not used to it. But, even if it had to go to North Texas, it's not too different. But, I digress. But, hosting is always better. It's much better to be at home. You never want to travel for conference championship games, especially with how G6 it's hosted at a home site, not on a neutral ground. So you always want to get that extra home game. It means that much more. It's as simple for me as you got to finish the drives yet again. They did a lot better in that Temple game, but still I think a little too many field goals when they should be finding the end zone. Still got to give a shout out to Patrick Durkin, the kicker, going 5 for 5, including a 52-yard field goal that had some space. So that's pretty impressive for a college kicker to do a 52-yard, and it had a decent space, so he probably could have gone another couple yards back, but he's been outstanding this year because last year, from what I had seen and watched, the special teams and the kicker specifically was trash. So this is like a godsend at this point for Tulane, where it's like I'm comfortable kicking field goals. So he's done great, and again, the offense did great as well with holding on to drives, holding on to that ball when it is needed. Another trend I'm seeing that I'm not liking too much is the offense starts off super hot, gets it going, seems like they're there, and then they get to that lead, and then they start to cool off. They kind of take a step back when you can't do that. You got to just end the game. Don't even give them a chance to even think about making it a game. Just make them give up by halftime, basically. Make them want to put in their backups by the third quarter, and don't even make it think that it's a close game when it shouldn't be, especially a team like Charlotte where they have not been good. It's just get it done, get it over with, and that helps with the defense as well, where they've continued to get better and better each week. Last week they were phenomenal against a pretty good team when it comes to the air, how they pass the ball. The Temple quarterback has only thrown, I believe it was 2 interceptions all year. He did throw one, but it was called back because they deemed that the ball hit the ground. Didn't look like it in my opinion, but I'm not a ref. But nonetheless, they stifled a little, dangerous air raid team there, and the tight ends on Temple, dude. Go look up how tall they are. Absurd. And I think they only have one American tight end as well. Everybody else is foreign. They are built different. It's absurd. No corner or anybody is covering that their tight end room. It's impossible. It's impossible. They're getting mossed every time. So they're insane. So you gotta go see how tall they are. But nonetheless, defense got it done when they needed to get it done. But yet again, gonna hark on it this week, especially this week being the last regular season game. Just win, you're in. Simple as that.
And that's the message for JMU this week against the Beach Chickens of Coastal Carolina. Let's make a statement. No team has beat Marshall, App State, or Coastal in the same year while they've been in the Sun Belt. So this is a chance for JMU to do something that no other team has done in the Sun Belt's history. And we need to win and win by a lot. The offense needs to play a little bit more relaxed than they did last week against Washington State, which, by the way, was an incredible atmosphere at Bridgeforth. JMU sold out all 6 home games. It's Thanksgiving break. Not all the students are on campus. Student section sold out, stayed the whole game. The crowd was rocking. It was an amazing game where JMU pulled off the comeback 24-20. Obviously, we really wanted to blow them out, but a good game to go to. It was truly electric, and they're going to get a chance to sell it out one more time in a couple weeks when JMU gets to host the Sun Belt Championship game, which has already been confirmed. The only team to secure a spot in a conference title game, and already know that they're hosting it in all of FBS. So, hashtag Pack Bridgeforth for a 7th time this year. JMU's crowd was really rocking. It's great to see from when I was in school there. No one was staying for a Thanksgiving game, and now students sold it out, and it was a packed stadium. It was awesome to see. And from a on the field standpoint, the defense just needs to keep doing what it's doing, just like the fans are. Keep showing up, keep performing. And from the offensive side, AB needs to get moving a little bit earlier. I want Dean Kennedy, our OC, to get him moving on the run a little bit and take some shots. And, of course, the message every week is to feed Wayne Knight. He is so damn good.
He has been a baller ever since I've been seeing him, but it's going to be a good one there. I mean, Coastal has been, pretty decent this year, but, this is JMU's chance to just put everything to bed, go on, get ready for the next one, because, you can't overlook this one before getting there to that conference championship game, because everything you've been working for could end, on Saturday if you don't get it done. So, got to win one at a time. That's said for both of our teams here, where just win, you're in, simple as that. So, But moving on to our must-watch games of the week this week. With it being rivalry week, there is a lot of must-watch games, but we picked out probably some of the better ones that aren't including JMU and Tulane. So our first one here is Georgia at Georgia Tech, of course. This being, one of those rivalries that is non-conference, but still pretty big nonetheless.
It's being played at a neutral site, which just is the lamest thing you could ever imagine. I wish this was on campus where college football games should be played.
It's stupid that you take, especially a game like this, where you take it away from a team that should have a home game. And it's absurd, because I believe last year's was at Georgia.
Georgia Tech sold this game.
Yeah, so like
site.
It's so stupid that they would be even willing to do that, because to welcome a team like a Georgia into your stadium, would be fantastic, because it would just be fun, because you get that rivalry game, you get that great atmosphere with how last year's game went, where it was like kind of down to the wire, all the overtimes, and how Kirby Smart forced a rule change with timeouts and stuff. So it's like, it would just make it so much more fun. And, obviously our Lord and Savior Haynes King. But for it to be moved to, obviously still in Atlanta, bigger site and Mercedes-Benz, I think it just gives that Georgia team more of an edge there, because they play there often when they go to the SEC championship. Yeah, and so it's stupid in my opinion, but it is what it is. I mean, it's the money at the end of the day, right?
I know that's what it all comes down to. But I think the most interesting you said is Haynes King. Does he have one more in him? Can he throw in one last wrinkle into the playoff and mess with Georgia's chances? That would be a win for Georgia Tech on their season, with how it's unfortunately looking to end. If they can really just burn their rivals on their way out the door and have Haynes King go off in a blaze of glory.
It would do a lot for Georgia Tech to win this game, because it might not help them in their case for the playoff and everything with it being out of conference. But it could hurt Georgia's chance here, with the possibility of how some things could fall with the SEC title game and them being at large potentially. So, it could shake up a few things. Do I think it's going to? Probably not. If they were in the same conference, it could mean more. But with them being out of conference and all their conference games already being played, it's kind of set in stone what things are going to happen. So,
with that being said, Tony, who are you taking in this one?
I can't doubt my king, Haynes King, but I got to give it to Georgia. I think they're just going to be too good for them. I think Georgia Tech is going to be reeling after that loss to Pitt at home. I do think Haynes King will have a pretty good game, but I don't think it'll be enough. I think Georgia is just going to take advantage of it being neutral and knowing this kind of stuff, and I think they just get it done.
I think Georgia's definitely the better team. They, on paper, on the field, they've been better. But I think Haynes King has one more in him, and I think he's going to be able to get it done for the Yellow Jackets on Friday evening. He's going to play lights out, and I think it's going to be a game much the same as it was last year, but this time Georgia Tech is going to come out on top in overtime.
I would love it. Can't hate the pick, because I that's what I want to see. So, Moving on to our next one here, and a pretty, if not massive, SEC game here where it could potentially help a team sneak into the playoff with Texas A&M going to Texas on Friday. Can A&M avoid choking in the late season that we usually see them do? Does a win help Texas sneak in? These are all the questions we will find out this weekend. So it's one of those games where Texas has been circling it. I mean, Texas A&M obviously has as well, being the rivalry week and whatnot. But it's pretty important for both teams here.
They both have a shot to do something here. Texas is playing for a shot to get into the playoff. I think A&M with a loss is still in at an at-large. It would be kind of crazy for them to fall all the way out. But A&M is playing for the SEC title, which they've never gotten. For a perfect season, 12-0, to knock off Texas on the road, it's going to be hard for them to not choke this one because I think that crowd is going to be really rocking in Austin. But Texas is going to need to play a complete game to beat A&M. I think A&M is the better team compared to the Longhorns, and I think that comes down to Marcel Reed really being the guy this year. And Arch Manning, I think he's gotten a lot more hate than he should have. He's not lived up to the hype, which I think was impossible to do. He's had a respectable season, but he is not Marcel Reed, and I think Reed is going to be the difference maker.
I agree with you there. I think Marcel Reed has the chance to really take over this game and just prove that he's on the next level. It's going to come down for me between him and Texas's defense. If they can kind of put a cap on him and make sure that he doesn't explode like he has been almost all season, make him make mistakes, that's going to swing it massively in their favor. Get those extra possessions if you can off the turnovers. Set Arch up for success. I mean, it's all about complementary football, I feel like, with Texas, where both sides have to be playing extremely well to have that collective game, especially for a team like Texas A&M, where from top to bottom they've been fantastic basically all year. So it's going to be pretty massive out of this of which Texas team can come out on top. Obviously, like you said, with Texas A&M playing for the SEC title game, which for them would be huge. But after all this, which Texas you taking?
I think I gave it away when talking about Marcel Reed. I'm going with the Aggies. I can't believe I'm saying that. Will, don't hold this one against me. But I'm going to go with the Aggies. I think they're going to get it done. I think they're just a better team than Texas at this point.
I'm going to have to agree with you there. I just think with the way things are going for Texas and the way things are going for Texas A&M, the momentum is there for Texas A&M. Texas is very hit or miss, so I think Texas A&M just gets it done, and the Aggies roll in undefeated.
Looking at this next game, a classic Pac-12 rivalry with Arizona and Arizona State. With Arizona State fighting for a chance at the Big 12 title. Yes, you heard that right. A lot of conference realignment, 2 Pac-12 teams battling out in the Big 12. ASU could sneak in if they win this game and get some additional help, while Arizona's just had a very solid season, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's massive for Arizona State here, where they have a chance to sneak in here, where they could get into that conference championship game and really create havoc in the Big 12 and really hurt BYU realistically.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, with Arizona, very sneaky season. They're ranked top 25 now in the committee's eyes. So, they've done enough to get the committee's attention and respect a little bit. So
I personally have them ranked.
They were probably my first team out this week. So, I mean, they've been on my radar, and I've noticed them, and I thought they were kind of just faltering away, but out of nowhere, they've just rescinded back into just to the limelight here. And, this game is going to, say a lot about these two teams here, where, we've seen Arizona State almost up and down all year with, how they're playing, doing good. Sam Leavitt's out for the year. Stuff like that. So, a lot of things have gone wrong for Arizona State, but for them to be in this position just says a lot about that team and their coach, especially with Coach Kenny. I mean, he's done it, and he's done it great so far with being able to will this team there and get them into this position now where they have a legit shot to shake up the Big 12.
it would be insane to see Arizona State somehow make the title game, then make the playoff if they win it. The storylines of that would just be insane. But the storyline that matters the most this weekend is who wins this rivalry game, Tony.
I think I'm going to have to go with Arizona State. I think they're going to get it done. I think it being at home for ASU is going to be that slight little difference maker where they can get it done. The momentum seems to be riding with them, and I think that added edge of being able to shake things up in the Big 12, make that conference championship game gives them that edge.
I think Arizona State had the chance to be one of the teams to make the playoff this year. I just think nothing went their way, and because of that, I think it's going to end that way with Arizona knocking them out of the Big 12 title game. I think it's just going to be kind of the narrative of Arizona State season. Really talented team that just couldn't overcome the injuries, and that's okay. I think Arizona State, considering what they went through to get to where they are now, is an impressive season. I think Arizona just gets the better of them for this year, but I think Arizona State will bounce back in the near future.
It's going to be a great battle in the state of Arizona. But moving on to another battle in the state of Tennessee, we have Vanderbilt traveling to Tennessee in a classic SEC showdown.
You know, this matchup is the biggest matchup we've had for a while in the series. And with a win, Vandy might make a case for the playoff. You know, an ever-important SEC win against a ranked Tennessee, which is honestly bullshit. But they could sneak in, which would be a crazy thing to see.
It would blow my mind if Vanderbilt can somehow sneak in here. I think they would need a lot of help to sneak in there at an at-large, but it's still possible. And, you know, like you had said, with getting a road win against a somehow ranked Tennessee team could help them get that edge over some of these other teams. But, you know, this is definitely probably the biggest Vandy-Tennessee matchup we have seen in quite some time.
Mm-hmm. And just, you know, Tennessee can play spoiler. There's nothing like knocking off who they see as probably not even worthy of being the little brother title. Knock them, you know, down a peg when Tennessee's supposed to be the team of the state, not Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt's ranked ahead of them. So this matchup, I think, is going to be physical, fast, and these two teams are just, they don't like each other. And Tony, who do you like in this one?
Who do I like in this one? I think I like the Vols. I think they get it done in good old Rocky Top. I think it's going to come down to the quarterback play between Pavia and Joey Aguilar. I think it's just easier for Aguilar to control the game, and I think from start to finish, he'll probably play a little more clean game, and I think he puts a stop to Vanderbilt and that Pavia Heisman hype.
The fact that this game is in Neyland is a big reason that Tennessee should be favored in this one. It's an insane place to play at. But I think Vanderbilt is going to get this one done. And not just because I've been on this anti-Tennessee train all year. I'm not switching up now. I'm going with Vandy in this one. They're going to march in there, knock off the Vols, and end the season on a high note with their fingers crossed for a playoff bid.
I like where your head's at with the anti-Tennessee agenda. I like that you're consistent, unlike the committee. But moving on to one of the bigger ACC matchups this week, where both teams cannot afford a loss. Miami, of course, traveling to Pitt this Saturday. This is, you know, like we had said earlier, one of the bigger ACC showdowns of this upcoming week. Obviously, all of them being important with how the scenarios are with the title game there, but this one definitely I would say holds the most weight with, you know, you lose, you're done, your playoff chances are over. So Miami has got to get it done on the road, and, you know, in a decent fashion, I would say as well, you know, with how things are going with the comparison of Notre Dame. We saw what Notre Dame did on the road here. So it's going to come down to the offense on the Hurricanes side. Can Carson Beck continue to just not make mistakes that he was making earlier, be smart with the ball, set him up for success, and, again, make sure that you're doing things convincingly. You don't want it to be kind of like a maybe sort of thing. Do it convincingly.
Mm-hmm. This is a massive game for the playoff picture, and quite frankly, I think Pitt, in my opinion, I like their odds to make the playoff more than Miami. I don't think a win here will boost Miami up enough to get in unless they get that help we've been talking about. But Pitt, they just need to keep winning. If they can win, they need a little help with either UVA or SMU losing. But if that happens, they control their own destiny and a spot in that playoff. Miami has looked fairly inconsistent this year. This is a game where they have to play 4 quarters of football from beginning to end because I think this Pitt team's going to come out strong.
We've all seen that, this is what Pitt has been looking forward to, where they know that this is their, shot to make that title game with a little help and give them their best chance at making the playoff. But with all that being said, who do you got out of this game?
I am going with my continued trend of 3 in a row taking the road team. I'm going with the Hurricanes. I think Miami's going to march into Pittsburgh and get the job done over the Panthers. I think that they're a more talented team, and they know that they have to have a good final performance to make sure that they get a shot at this playoff.
I'm going to agree with you here. I think the U gets it done on the road, and they're going to get it done on the back of their running game. They're going to come in there, run the ball down their throat, help set up Carson Beck for success where he doesn't have to force anything. And I think they're just going to show Pittsburgh that this is their shot, and they're going to do it to make sure that there's no question marks over them.
I think it'll be a good game, but I think Miami, like we said, is going to get this done. And probably the game of the week where College Game Day is going, the game, Ohio State at Michigan, Saturday at noon. This is going to be an extremely tense game between 2 really bitter rivals.
It's the one that everyone has been looking forward to, obviously, with how both seasons have gone for each team, where Ohio State has been at the top all year. No questions about them, really. And Michigan's been kind of up and down, where there was some uncertainty with them and, how they would be ranked, where they would fall. But they've made their way up, and they've looked a little better over the weeks. And, stemming from last season, what had happened in that game, or the game, I should say, and how things have fallen the last 4 years for Ohio State, where they have lost 4 straight times, is pretty massive. They want to break that trend, get it back to the way it used to be, where Ohio State was just running Michigan almost every year. And for some reason, Michigan has found their kryptonite and just taught Ohio State that this is our game, and we're going to do it again.
And I think the home crowd's really going to help Michigan. I think that's the deciding factor of this game. I think Ohio State is the better team, but Michigan knows that if it beats Ohio State, the number 1 team in the country, they will get into the playoff, and they're going to have their home crowd roaring behind them. And I think that's going to be a huge difference maker, especially to boost the confidence of Bryce Underwood, their quarterback, when he's going to have to duel against Julian Sayin, who might be the Heisman frontrunner right now.
It's going to be massive between those two with Julian Sayin. Julian Sayin, we know this year, has been sneaky good. He hasn't had a lot of the headlines like some of the other quarterbacks and whatnot, but he's putting up some crazy numbers. And it helps when you have Jeremiah Smith, the best receiver in the nation, more than likely, where you could basically just chuck the ball up and that dude's going to catch it. And then, not to mention, on top of that, they have Carnell Tate as well, who has also been balling out this season. So if Michigan can find a way to mitigate those two and make sure that they do not take control of the game, they're setting themselves up for success. And it's also going to come down to if they can make Bryce Underwood comfortable, make sure he can live up to the tension and the height of the game, because it being his first as a freshman as well, it's going to be hard to take. It's all going to be hard to take in one. And, the pressure could get to him. It could not get to him. We'll have to see.
That crowd is going to be bringing a lot of pressure for Ohio State. I can guarantee that. And this is going to be a high-pressured game. Tony, who are you rocking with?
Oh man, I think this one's tougher than it's painted to be. I think that it being at the Big House in Michigan is huge. Like you've been saying, this crowd is going to be massive. But Ohio State is, from top to bottom, probably the best team in the nation. But it ain't enough. I'm taking Michigan. I'm taking the Big Blue. I think they get it done for 5 years in a row. And I think it just screams Michigan winning to me. I think it's just there for them. They're not supposed to, but they're going to.
Man, you really had me going there. I'm not gonna lie. I really thought you were taking Ohio State. I was really thinking you were, and I agree. I'm going with Michigan in this one. For what I said, the crowd, the Big House, feeding off that energy. I think you're right. This just feels like a Michigan game ripe for the taking yet again. I think Ohio State's going to be playing upset based off the game last year, and Michigan has a chance to shock the world and make people have some uncomfortable conversations about who deserves to be in the playoff.
Absolutely. It could throw a wrench into everything. Yet again, these games are going to be absolutely insane. And also, got to give a shout out really quick to DeMarco. I hope Ohio State loses purely because of you, and I hope you don't make the fantasy playoffs. But other than that, there are a couple of games we want to hit on really quick that are also pretty important this week, with Oregon and Washington playing each other. There's always a great game between those two. Troy versus Southern Miss for that other slot in the Sun Belt title game, who will be traveling to Harrisonburg. Navy versus Memphis, again, like we had mentioned with the American, how things are going down. And then, of course, San Diego State versus New Mexico. If San Diego State, can keep themselves relevant in some things. Those are some other games we wanted to hit on really quick. But other than that, let us know what you are looking forward to this rivalry week. What are the games that are going to absolutely change everything? What are the games that mean absolutely nothing? What do you think about our rankings? What did the committee do right? What did they do wrong? They mostly do everything wrong. So it doesn't really matter. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok at Dynasty Dumbies. Feel free to follow our personal Twitter accounts at Hunter_Shaw5 and at CronyTony20. And we will see you all next week after this great slate of games.
Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone.